Before we begin, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's dive in. The sun was dying. Its last rays clawed across the red earth of Agbadu village, painting the dust gold. Crows circled overhead like silent messengers of doom. A boy, no older than 15, Adepoju, knelt beneath a towering baobab tree. Blood soaked through the fabric tied around his arm. His fingers trembled. His eyes were locked on a figure that had once been his father's closest friend, Bashoran Olusoji, now towering over him with a sword still dripping with crimson. "Forgive me," the Bashoran whispered. But there was no forgiveness in what followed. The blade came down, but not on Adepoju. Instead, a soldier behind him gasped, stumbled, and fell. An Egba warrior, young, lean, face covered in ash, had hurled his spear from the tree line. Bashoran Olusoji turned, rage crackling in his bones. The boy scrambled backward into the tall grass, heart pounding like a war drum. He should have died that day, but death would have been easier. Instead, what followed was worse. Abandonment, exile, and a war that would swallow everything he ever loved. 1 hour earlier, Adepoju had walked beside his father, Are Ona Kakanfo Adediran, the fearless general of the Oyo army, as they made their way into Egba territory under the guise of diplomacy. The Oyo had grown restless. The Egba, once loyal vassals, had stopped sending tribute. Rumors whispered of a rebellion brewing behind the thick forests and hidden valleys. Adediran didn't believe them. He believed in peace, and that was his mistake. Bashoran Olusoji had arrived under the banner of Oyo tradition, wearing the royal red beads of the palace. He brought kola nuts, palm wine, and the chalk of a cord, symbols of peace. But in his other hand, he carried something more dangerous than a blade, a lie. Because that day wasn't meant for diplomacy, it was meant for betrayal. His eyes betrayed nothing. His hands were steady as he passed the chalk to the Egba chiefs, but in the shadows, his soldiers were already moving, surrounding the camp. Adepoju saw it. He tugged on his father's sleeve. "Baba, something's wrong." His father didn't listen, not until it was too late. The first scream came from the edge of the village. Then flames erupted from a hut. An Egba woman cried out, clutching a baby wrapped in dyed cloth, running into the woods. Spears flew. Drums beat in panic. Betrayal spilled like oil across dry ground. In that instant, Adepoju saw it all unravel. His father grabbed his sword and pushed him toward the trees. "Run!" he shouted, but the boy didn't run fast enough. A spear grazed his arm. He collapsed beneath the baobab tree, gasping, dizzy, and that's where Bashoran found him, towering, disappointed, sword in hand. "You were never meant to be here," Olusoji muttered. "We needed your father to die, not you." And then, that spear, that ash-faced Egba warrior, that impossible escape. Adepoju wakes up in a smoky hut, his arm wrapped in leaves. The Egba warrior who saved him now stands at the door. His face is familiar, too familiar. "You shouldn't be alive," the warrior says. Neither of them blinks. The night wind whispered through the cracked walls of the hut, and Adepoju couldn't sleep. The pain in his arm had dulled, but his mind was on fire. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father shouting, flames licking the sky, and Bashoran Olusoji's sword raised high. But now, across the dim glow of the fire, the ash-faced Egba warrior sat silently still, watchful. "Who are you?" Adepoju asked. The warrior didn't speak at first. He stared into the fire, as if looking for an answer buried in the flames. "My name is Aragundade," he said at last, his voice rough like gravel. "You should have died with the others." Adepoju swallowed. "Why didn't you let me?" Aragundade glanced up. "Because you don't know the truth yet." Oyo City shimmered under the morning sun like gold dust on a lion's back. In the heart of the capital, young Adepoju raced through the palace courtyard, chasing a wooden spear carved for him by his father. He was only 10 then, still too young to carry steel, but already dreaming of war. Everyone said he would be great one day, After all, he was the son of Area Ona Kakanfo Adediran, the highest-ranking general in the Oyo Empire, protector of kings, breaker of rebellions, voice of thunder in war council. But behind the grandeur was a boy who longed not for battle, but for approval, especially from Basharan Olusoji, his godfather. Olusoji was a figure of power. He held the second most powerful title in the empire, advisor to the Alafin, keeper of tradition, and sometimes whisperer of shadows. To Adepoju, Olusoji was more than a statesman. He was family. But power, when mixed with jealousy, turns sweet wine into poison. Adediran was not a cruel man, but he was distant, tougher than sun-hardened leather. He loved his son like a commander loves his sword, with utility and expectation. "You must be stronger than me," he often said, handing Adepoju scrolls on strategy instead of bedtime stories. "One day, this empire will need a lion, not a lamb." So Adepoju obeyed. He trained, he studied, he bled. But the praise he wanted never came. It came instead from Olusoji, who watched him with quiet interest, always ready with a word of comfort or manipulation. "You will be the true heir of Oyo, not just your father's shadow," Olusoji once whispered, placing a hand on Adepoju's shoulder. But only if you open your eyes." At night, Adepoju would sometimes overhear voices, his father arguing with the Basharan behind closed doors. "The Egba are restless," Adediran warned. "They are loyal," Olusoji replied with calm venom, "unless you push them away." The boy didn't understand it then, but he remembered the silence that followed, long, tight silence filled with secrets no child could name. Until now. In the flickering firelight, Aragundade tossed something at Adepoju's feet. A torn scroll, old, blood-stained, sealed with the crest of the Alafin. Adepoju picked it up. His hands trembled as he opened it. It wasn't a battle plan. It was a decree, one never meant to be seen. The Alafin had ordered a secret alliance with the Egba, offering them land and semi-autonomy in exchange for defending Oyo's southern border. But the letter was never delivered. Olusoji intercepted it, Aragundade said quietly. He wanted war. War gives him control. Adepoju looked up, his voice cracking. "So he betrayed my father. For power." Aragundade's jaw tightened. "And you were the final piece. He was going to raise you, mold you, into his puppet. After your father died." The boy's stomach turned. Everything he believed, everything he trained for, was a lie. Footsteps. Outside the hut. Aragundade's hand moved to his blade. "They found us," he whispered. Adepoju stood slowly, scroll still clutched in his bloodied hand. "What now?" he asked. The warrior smiled grimly. "Now, we run, and then we fight." The bush was alive with shadows. Every branch cracked like a bone beneath their feet. Every rustle in the grass was a whisper of death. But still, they ran, Adepoju and Aragundade, through the sacred forests that separated Egba land from the hidden fringes of the Oyo Empire. Behind them, torchlight flickered like fireflies. Olusoji's men were hunting. "I thought you said no one would follow us," Adepoju hissed between gulps of breath. "I lied," Aragundade muttered. Ahead, the path dipped. A curtain of hanging vines hid a cave entrance known only to those who carried Egba blood. Aragundade yanked Adepoju inside, just as arrows thudded into the trees behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, the cave opened into a vast, underground chamber, walls painted with ancient stories in ochre and charcoal. Warriors, kings, fire, rebirth. It was a forgotten shrine of the old gods, where the first Egba resistance gathered generations ago. And there, by the low burning flame, sat a woman cloaked in blue beads and leopard hide. Her eyes glinted like moonlight on steel. "Aragundade," she said, not rising. "You bring a boy to a battlefield of spirits. He's not just a boy," the warrior said. "He's the general's son." Her eyes narrowed. "The lion cub whose father was devoured?" Adepoju stiffened. "I am Adepoju, son of Adediran," he said, stepping forward, "and I came to find the truth." The woman stood now, towering in dignity. Her name was Orunkanmi, High Priestess of the Forest Oracle. She tossed a bundle of cloth before Adepoju. Inside it, a half-burnt scroll, its writing barely legible. The scroll was centuries old, older than the empire itself. It told of a child born of both flame and betrayal, a boy whose bloodline would either end the Oyo dynasty or redeem it. It speaks of two fathers, Orunkanmi whispered. One by blood, one by war. One will rise to shape your sword, the other will die by it. Adepoju's hands trembled. Was this truly about him? The priestess spoke of a forgotten deal between the Egba and the throne, sealed with ash and gold, but broken when Oyo's kings began favoring profit over people. The Egba were pushed, their lands stolen, their warriors silenced, and then came Olusoji. He used fear, created enemies where there were none, planted spies, provoked skirmishes, and when the Oyo generals protested, he made them disappear, including Adediran. He didn't just betray your father, Orunkanmi said, he betrayed the gods. Suddenly, shouting, a scream echoed through the cave, followed by a clash of steel. Aragundade pulled Adepoju behind him just as one of the supposed Egba warriors struck down a guard near the cave mouth. A traitor, the man wasn't Egba, not truly. He was Oyo, sent by Olusoji, dressed in stolen armor. The cave erupted into chaos. Aragundade fought with fury. Orunkanmi drew a curved blade from beneath her robes, moving like the wind. Adepoju grabbed a fallen spear. For the first time in his life, not in training, not in ceremony, but in real battle, he fought and won. When the dust settled, the traitor lay dead, but so did two Egba guards. Adepoju looked down at his blood-soaked hands. "Is this who I am now?" he whispered. Orunkanmi placed a hand on his shoulder. "You were born in war, but you don't have to become it." Aragundade stared at the boy for a long moment. "You asked earlier what now," he said. "Now we find the others. There are more who resist, but first." He knelt, reached into his cloak, and pulled out a carved bone whistle. He blew. From the trees above the cave, a dozen figures emerged, eyes glowing with paint, spears gleaming in the moonlight. The forest kin, the last untouched warriors of the old Egba resistance. Orunkanmi raised her hands. "Tonight, we welcome the son of the fallen general." The warriors knelt, but she wasn't done. "And tomorrow, we march on the capital." The wind in Oyo carried no scent of mercy. Its great walls still stood majestic and cruel, carved with lions and thunderclouds, as if daring the world to forget who ruled the rain and the earth. But inside those walls, rot festered. The empire was dying, and the people knew it. Yet none dared say so aloud. That was where Adepoju now stood, not as a prince, not as a warrior, but as a servant. Dressed in linen smeared with ash, a heavy basket strapped to his back, he walked the narrow servant paths that snaked behind the palace of Olusoji the regent. His heart beat like a war drum. He was inside the lion's mouth now. Every step brought him closer to death. He had been smuggled into the city with Aragundade's help, through a network of resistance allies, hidden in plain sight, cooks, guards and griots, who remembered the time of Adediran and whispered his name like a prayer. Now, Adepoju worked under an alias, Obaolu, an orphaned kitchen boy. But his true mission was far more dangerous. He had to find the Abora room, the secret council chamber, where Olusoji met his shadow advisors, and where, rumor claimed, the truth about General Adediran's death was buried. "You'll be walking into a pit of vipers," Aragundade had warned. "Then I'll learn how to dance among snakes," Adepoju had replied, and now here he was. His hands scrubbed the floors of the halls his father once walked. His knees bled where kings once knelt, but his eyes missed nothing. He watched who came and went. He memorized the shifts of the guards, and finally, he saw it. An old blind priest, led by two masked guards into a hall that didn't appear on any map. Adepoju followed. The corridor narrowed, lit only by flickering oil lamps. At the end stood a door, unmarked, carved with faded glyphs of war and balance. Adepoju waited until the guards left. He slid inside. The room was circular, filled with obsidian pillars and skulls of past kings. Candles floated on dark water that pooled across the floor like ink. In the center, an altar, and behind it scrolls. He stepped forward, heart in his throat. But before he could reach them, a voice. "You look too bold for a servant boy." From the shadows stepped a figure in a red mask, slim, graceful, armed. A blade glinted at Adepoju's throat. "I should kill you," she said, "but you don't smell like fear." "I'm not afraid of you," Adepoju whispered. The blade paused. "You should be." The girl removed her mask. Her face was tattooed in the style of Oyo's elite, but her eyes, sharp and burning, told a different story. "I'm Olamide, daughter of Chief Mobolaji," she said, "and I'm here for the same reason you are." They stared at each other. Two strangers, two blades, one fate. Olamide stepped aside. Together, they opened one of the scrolls on the altar. It was brittle with age, marked Report of Treachery, General Adediran. Adepoju's hands shook as he read. General refused to execute the Egba prisoners. Said they were civilians. Said we were no longer soldiers, only butchers. Regent Olusoji ordered his arrest, but Adediran fought back. He was chained. Taken to the Tower of Rain, last seen alive 3 nights before the fire. The Tower of Rain. Not dead in battle, not executed quickly, but imprisoned, silenced, tortured. Adepoju clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. "I knew your father," Olamide said softly. Adepoju looked at her. "He once saved my mother from being branded as a traitor," she continued. "I owe him everything." She reached into her sleeve and produced a small pendant, his father's seal. "He gave me this, the day before they took him." Adepoju took it, and for a moment, time stopped. The weight of legacy, of pain, of purpose, settled on his shoulders like a crown made of thorns. "I will finish what he started," he said. "I swear it." Suddenly, bells. The signal of a breach. Someone had been seen in the restricted halls. "We need to leave. Now," Olamide said. Guards were already shouting. Footsteps thundered. They ran, back through the hidden corridor, ducking behind old tapestries and storage carts. But at the final gate, a sword blocked their path. Olusoji. The regent stood tall, dressed in black and gold. His eyes burned with cruel amusement. "Well, well," he said, raising his sword, "the lion's cub comes home." Adepoju stepped forward, unflinching. "If I am a cub," he said, voice steady, "then you should fear the day I grow claws." Olusoji laughed once, cold and hollow, and then lunged. The sword clanged against stone, sparks leaping like fireflies. Adepoju barely ducked the second swing. Olamide drew her twin daggers, spinning between the guards like a ghost in red. She moved with purpose, trained, dangerous, but the odds were cruel. Steel surrounded them. Olusoji's voice thundered above the chaos. "Seal the exits. I want them alive until I say otherwise." Adepoju grabbed a torch from the wall and spun toward the scrolls. If they couldn't take the truth, they would destroy the lie. With a fierce cry, he hurled the torch onto the altar. Flames erupted, consuming the ancient documents like dry leaves in a storm. "No!" shouted one of the guards, but it was too late. Olamide kicked over an oil jar, fueling the inferno. They turned and ran as smoke flooded the chamber, blinding their pursuers. Down narrow servant corridors, through the old catacombs beneath the palace, places only the forgotten remembered. Olamide led the way. "There's a tunnel under the western wing," she said between breaths. Behind them, the sound of armored feet grew louder, closer. A spear whistled past Adepoju's ear. He stumbled, rolled, kept running. They burst through a cracked wall, landing hard in the roots of a fig tree older than the empire itself. Olamide yanked a loose stone from the earth, and beneath it, a tunnel, just wide enough to crawl. They emerged into the jungle 2 miles from the city walls, filthy, bruised, alive. For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars above blinked coldly. The moon was full, watching, judging, silent. Then Olamide turned to Adepoju. "You're mad," she said. "You destroyed everything." "No," he replied. "I destroyed what they wanted us to believe. The truth is still with me. He held up the pendant, and inside its hollow core, a micro-scroll thin as silk, the real report, the one Olusoji never knew existed. Inside the scroll, written in his father's hand, "They cannot kill truth. If you read this, then I have fallen. But I planted seeds in men and women who will remember. The lion must rise when the jackals feast." Adepoju stared at the words until his tears blurred the ink. His father had left him more than blood. He had left him a map. 2 days later, deep in the forests of Ife, they arrived at the Resistance's hidden camp. Aragundad ran to embrace them. "You did it," he whispered. "You brought proof." But the joy was short-lived. One of the scouts galloped into camp, bloodied and breathless. "They know," he gasped. "Olusoji's army is moving. They'll raze every village suspected of sheltering you. Oyo is declaring war on its own people." The camp fell silent. Inside the war tent, the council of rebels argued. "We can't fight the Oyo army head-on," one elder said. "We should run," said another. "Go to Benin, live to fight later." Adepoju slammed his fist onto the table. "No more running," he growled. "That's what they want." "They have soldiers," said Aragundad. "What do we have?" Adepoju looked around. Farmers, hunters, exiles. Then he said something no one expected. "We have stories." Olamide understood first. "You want to start a fire," she said. Adepoju nodded. "Not with weapons," he said. "With truth. We burn their lives with the one thing they fear, memory." They would send griots, storytellers, into every village, every market, every shrine, to sing the truth of Adadiran, of the Tower of Rain, of Olusoji's betrayal. Not just soldiers, people would rise. He would not fight an empire. He would awaken one. That night, as the fires of the camp burned low, a shadow slipped through the trees, into Olusoji's waiting arms. It was a member of the resistance, face hidden, voice trembling. "He has the scroll," the traitor said. "They plan to use it to spark rebellion." Olusoji smiled coldly. "Let them try," he said. He handed the traitor a pouch of gold. "Deliver a message for me," he whispered. "Tell Adepoju, his lion heart will soon feed my dogs." Back at the camp, Adepoju knelt beneath the ancient baobab tree. He traced his father's name into the earth. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "If I fall, let it be loud enough that all of Oyo hears." Aragundade stepped beside him. "They will." Then a horn sounded. From the edge of the jungle came the glint of steel. Olusoji's army had arrived, and the first battle for the soul of the empire was about to begin. The jungle held its breath. Mist curled like fingers around the resistance camp. Dew clung to leaves. Somewhere, a monkey screeched and went silent. Beneath the ancient baobab tree, Adepoju stood cloaked in silence. He held a carved horn in his hand, his father's war horn. He turned to Aragundade and Olamide. "When I blow this," he said, "there's no going back." Olamide nodded. "The truth has a sound, let them hear it." And then the horn sang, a deep primal note that rolled through the trees like thunder. It was time. The first wave of Oyo soldiers burst through the undergrowth, shields gleaming, blades drawn. But what they met was not an army. It was the people. Men with machetes, women with spears, children armed with slings, griots singing war chants older than kings. From the trees came arrows. From the riverbanks came fire. Adepoju led the charge, not behind them, but beside them. He moved like a storm, and behind him the roar grew. For Adadiran, for the truth, the lion had awakened. Amid the chaos, a tall figure emerged from the smoke, draped in black robes, face hidden beneath a silver mask. Soldiers fell back. Even Olamide froze. "Who is that?" Aragundade asked. The figure raised a staff carved with strange symbols. It struck the ground once. Boom! The earth shook. Fire exploded from the nearby palm trees, forming a circle around the enemy. Then the figure spoke. "I bring a message from the forgotten. The gods do not sleep." And Adadiran was not the only one. After the battle, as the dead were counted and the wounded treated, the masked figure removed his hood. Gasps filled the camp. He was elderly but powerful, and beneath his robes, the insignia of the Olefin Brotherhood, a secret order of historians, protectors of forbidden knowledge. "I am called Ayotunde," he said, "and I was your father's brother in truth, not by blood, but by vow." He unfurled a map, not of Oyo, but of the original kingdom, the empire that predated all Oduduwa's cradle. "Olusoji's lies go deeper than any of you know," Ayotunde said. "The scroll you carry is only part of the key." According to Ayotunde, a hidden vault lay within the mountains of Ekiti. There, Adediran had hidden the full Codex of Oyo's true origin. If recovered, it would not just shame Olusoji, it would destroy the very foundation of his rule. But it came with a price. "It is guarded," Ayotunde warned, "by an ancient oath, and by something far older than swords." Olumide narrowed her eyes. What kind of guardian? Ayotunde looked to the stars, the kind that remembers blood. That night, Adepoju sat alone, staring into the fire. He had led people into battle. He had survived. But could he truly bear the weight of an empire's lost soul? Olumide sat beside him. "You're scared," she said. He didn't deny it. "I'm not my father," he whispered. "No," she replied. "You're something else." She took his hand, and that's what makes them afraid. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Olusoji stared at the battlefield reports. His general trembled. "They outnumber us in the forests. They fight like spirits." Olusoji slammed his fist on the table. "Then we burn the forests," he growled. And with that he summoned the Black Legion, an elite, merciless unit once thought extinct. Masked, silent, trained to kill without honor. "Send them to Ekiti," Olusoji said. "Follow the boy, bring me his head, and the scroll." At sunrise, the resistance set out toward the mountains. Every village they passed offered water, food, shelter, and every village was marked for death by Olusoji's decree. But the people chose to stand anyway. They painted lions on their doors. They sang the name Adediran in defiance. The legend was spreading faster than any army. And somewhere in the shadows, the Black Legion followed. As they neared the base of the mountains, Adepoju collapsed from exhaustion. Ayotunde rushed to his side. "Let him rest," he said. "The mountain chooses who may pass." That night, Adepoju dreamed. He stood before the Tower of Rain, but it was no longer in ruin. It was alive, glowing, humming with energy. Inside stood his father, but his face was carved from stone. "The past is not buried," the stone Adediran whispered. "It waits beneath your feet. When you find the cradle, do not bow. Break the chain." Adepoju awoke, sweating, breath ragged, and at that moment, the first shadow of the Black Legion stepped into the trees. The sun barely touched the jagged ridges of the Ekiti Mountains as Adepoju and the resistance scaled the ancient trails. Their feet bled, their lips cracked, but no one turned back. Every step was a prayer. Every breath was a rebellion. At the front, Ayotunde walked in silence, clutching a glowing orb wrapped in goat hide. "The mountain knows who seeks truth," he said. "It will open to some and devour others." At the summit, they reached an arch carved from obsidian, etched with symbols that seemed to move when stared at too long. It was the Gate of Whispers. To pass, each seeker had to face a voice from their past. Olamide stepped forward first. She heard her mother's scream, the night she was taken as a child by soldiers of Olusoji. Her hands trembled, but she walked through. Adepoju followed. He heard Adediran's voice say, "What if you are not strong enough?" But he clenched his fists and stepped into the shadow. And the gate opened. Unseen by the group, shadows slithered behind rocks. The Black Legion had arrived, silent, precise, their faces hidden behind bone masks. They didn't attack in full. They stalked, picked off scouts, left bloodless bodies as warnings. And deeper in the mountains, they set traps. But one boy in the resistance, young Kunle, spotted their movement. He ran back to warn the others. Only he didn't make it. All they found was his flute, still playing a single, eerie note. At the mountain's heart, they reached it, the cradle of Oduduwa. Not a palace, a cavern, vast and humming, with walls alive with moving script. Glyphs glowed softly, forming constellations in mid-air. In the center stood a sarcophagus carved from starlight stone. Ayotunde whispered, "This is the vault." Adepoju stepped forward and placed the scroll inside a hollow groove on the lid. The entire chamber trembled. The sarcophagus opened. Inside were dozens of scrolls, older than Oyo itself, and among them a codex bound in leather from an animal no one could name. Ayotunde unrolled it. His hands shook. "This changes everything." Olamide read aloud. "Oyo was not born from war, it was born from betrayal. The first king was not crowned. He stole the crown." Gasps filled the room. The entire foundation of Oyo's royal bloodline was built on lies. And worse, the codex revealed Olusoji's ancestor was the betrayer. Adepoju stumbled back. The truth was too much. He had fought for justice, for legacy. But this meant his father's dream, restoring the true story of Oyo, was based on ashes. He dropped to his knees. "What are we even fighting for?" he whispered. Olamide knelt beside him. "For the right to remember, not for crowns, for truth." Ayotunde added, "This knowledge is dangerous, but it's also a weapon." Suddenly, a scream echoed from the rear of the cave. One of the resistance members, a quiet, loyal girl named Zainab, was holding a blade to Ayotunde's throat. "I'm sorry," she said, tears in her eyes. "They took my sister." She threw a vial to the ground. Smoke, poison gas. Chaos erupted. As the cave filled with choking fog, Zainab vanished into the tunnels, codex in hand. The Black Legion had infiltrated their ranks. The poison triggered a trap in the mountain itself. Rocks began to fall. The ceiling cracked. They grabbed what scrolls they could and ran. Ayotunde, coughing blood, pushed Adepoju ahead. "Protect what you've seen, even if it kills you." Half the resistance didn't make it out. But when the survivors emerged, blinking into the sunlight, Adepoju held two things in his hands, a fragment of the codex and his father's horn. In the capital, General Orokunrin knelt before Olusoji. They escaped with fragments. Olusoji was calm, too calm. "That's all we need," he said. "Let them spread half-truths. We will bury them beneath a mountain of fire." He stood, turning to his war table. "Summon the Oracle of Smoke. If they want history, let's show them what forgetting looks like." That night, in a hidden cave, Adepoju dipped his fingers in dye and drew the ancient glyphs onto the wall, not just for himself, for the world. A message. We were lied to, but the lie ends here. We are the children of the cradle, and the lion remembers. Olamide lit the flames beside it. The war glowed, visible for miles. Not just a warning, a beginning. In the deepest catacomb beneath the royal palace, lit by crimson torches and choking incense, Olusoji stood before a gate made of blackened bones. Behind it waited the one thing even kings feared, the Oracle of Smoke. "She speaks only to those willing to lose themselves," whispered General Orokunrin. Olusoji removed his crown, his ring, his name. The gate opened, and smoke, thick, sentient and ancient, spilled into the air, coiling around him like a serpent. A voice, rasping and layered with centuries, spoke. "You seek to erase what has already been carved in the bones of the earth." He bowed. "Then give me a fire hot enough to burn stone." The oracle did not answer right away. Instead, visions filled the chamber. A boy holding a burning horn, a scroll dipped in blood, a mountain crumbling over a city. Then she whispered, "You must pay with a piece of your soul. You will be feared, not remembered, worshipped, but never loved." Olusoji did not flinch. "I choose fear." The oracle screamed, and from her mouth came a black flame that wrapped around Olusoji's body. When he walked out of the chamber, he was not the same man. His eyes were smoke, his voice echoed with thunder. Far away, Adepoju and the remnants of the resistance licked their wounds in an abandoned village once called Ogidi, now a ghost town buried by time and silence. They had lost people. They had lost trust. And worse, they had lost the Codex. "What now?" asked one of the survivors. Adepoju stared at the flames. "Now we stop being rebels." He stood up, pulling the war horn from his satchel, and become the story. Ayotunde revealed an ancient technique, the echo flame, a ritual that could broadcast a message across the continent using fire and memory combined. But it came at a cost. One life must anchor the ritual. Olamide stepped forward. "I've seen enough of this world." But Adepoju stopped her. "No, we've sacrificed enough." He turned to the boy who had once been silent since his village burned. Toby, the last flute player of Iragbiji. "I'll do it," the boy whispered. He lit the flame, sang a song older than Oyo itself. The sky turned gold, the air shimmered, and across the empire visions began to appear. The betrayal of Oyo's founders, the truth from the Codex. Olusoji's pact with the oracle. The people began to stir. But Olusoji was ready. From the northern desert he unleashed the Obsidian Riders, a ghost army riding horses made of soot and bone. They moved like smoke. Wherever the echo flame touched, they attacked. Villages turned to ash. Truth was buried beneath black fire. And the oracle's voice whispered into the dreams of rulers, priests, and teachers. "Forget, forget, forget." Adepoju stood in the Temple of Winds, a forgotten ruin that legends called the last mouth of the ancients. There he read the final lines of the Codex fragment. A prophecy. "When the blood of a lion and the breath of a flute awaken the wind, the forgotten king shall rise." He placed the horn to his lips. Blew. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Then Olamide stepped beside him and began to sing. Suddenly, the earth shook. Wind howled, and beneath the temple a stairway opened. They descended into the tomb of the first true king of Oyo, Oranyan, the betrayed son of Oduduwa. His body lay perfectly preserved, clutching a blade made of sun metal. In his chest, the seal of the original crown. Adepoju took the blade. As his hand gripped it, ancient symbols lit across his body. And in that moment, he became the Lion King reborn. With the blade in hand, Adepoju raised it before the resistance. "The war for memory has begun," he said. "But we do not fight to destroy, we fight to remember." They marched out of the tomb, light behind them, shadows ahead. Olusoji stood atop the great wall of Egbaland, his cloak made of smoke, his smile cold as death. "Come then, child of truth, let's see what lies you bleed for." The horizon blazed red. Not with sunrise, but with fire. Villages burning, cities silenced, scrolls turned to ash. Adepoju stood at the ridge of Mount Onoron, gazing at the smoke trails rising in the distance. Behind him, the Legion of Remembrance. Artists, griots, warriors, midwives, scribes, and children holding drums stood ready. "This is not a war for land," he said. "It's a war for truth." Olamide tied a red thread around her wrist. "For every lie they buried, we'll carve a truth into the sky." In the capital of the new Oyo Empire, the sky had turned permanently dark. Olusoji's citadel rose like a needle of obsidian. On its walls, giant carvings had been etched, his version of history. A king chosen by gods, a rebellion crushed by betrayal, a codex that never existed. Inside, the oracle of smoke hovered above a black altar, whispering, "Burn their memories. Even ash can be forgotten." Olusoji, dressed in molten armor, nodded. "Let's rewrite the world." The resistance made their way through the Valley of Shattered Names, where monuments to forgotten ancestors once stood. Adepoju lit a torch at each one, name by name, ancestor by ancestor. Each torch became a person, Each person became a story, and with each step, their army grew, not just fighters, but rememberers. At the gates of the citadel, Olusoji released his final weapon, the Ashen Seraphim, winged beasts made of charred feathers and forgotten prayers. They shrieked in voices that erased thought, but Ayatunde had prepared. She summoned the voice of the first drum, a sound older than silence. It shattered the sky. The beasts screamed and fell. For the first time in years, sunlight pierced through the clouds above Oyo. At the heart of the city, Adepoju met Olusoji beneath the pillar of erased kings. Both were armed with relics, Adepoju with the sunblade of Oranyan, Olusoji with the smoke crown of the oracle. Their clash was more than steel. Every blow restored a memory, erased a lie, shattered a false scroll. When Adepoju bled, he saw visions of his mother, beaten for telling stories. When Olusoji bled, he saw the boy he once was, gentle, kind, afraid of fire. They fought, not just to win, but to decide who would be remembered. As the two kings clashed, Olamide reached the oracle's chamber. The spirit screamed, "I am the silence that comes after truth." But she stood tall, holding a shard of the Codex. "Then I am the song that comes before silence." She threw the shard into the oracle's heart. It shattered, and with it the power to erase memories died. Bleeding, staggering and unmasked, Olusoji fell to his knees. He looked at Adepoju. "I didn't want to erase history," he said. "I wanted to protect us from it." Adepoju lowered his blade. "We can't heal what we forget, only what we face." Olusoji nodded, and in his last act he summoned all the smoke he had ever conjured and sealed it away in the stone walls of his citadel. The blackened tower cracked and collapsed. The skies cleared. Weeks later, the Codex, restored, rewritten and renamed, was placed in the Temple of Winds. Its new title, The Book of Us. Not a king's story, not a rebel's myth, but the tale of a people who refused to forget. Children came to read it. Teachers taught from it. Scribes added to it. Each page alive, each story breathing. Adepoju stood atop Mount Olorun once more. The war was over. But he knew what the Codex said. The memory of a savior must fade, so the people may save themselves. He gave his blade to a boy learning to write. He gave his name to a girl learning to sing, and then he disappeared into legend. It had been 30 years. The empire had fallen. The Book of Us now lay open in every school, village square and shrine across the continent. Children read it aloud in the mornings. Elders added footnotes to its pages in the evenings. But peace, like memory, is never permanent. Beneath the calm surface, a new silence was growing. A silence not of fear, but of comfort. The kind that forgets why the story mattered. In the glass towers of Egbe, the capital built where the citadel once stood, a young archivist named Tari walked among holograms of the past. Tari was brilliant, curious, but she had never heard drums. She had never smelled burning scrolls. She only knew the Codex as a history book. One morning, while restoring a damaged fragment, she found something strange. To the children not yet born, truth will sleep again. When it wakes, it will be hungry. The page pulsed and whispered her name. Elsewhere in the city, murals began changing. Sculptures reshaped themselves. Ancient faces once wiped from history appeared on walls. People started dreaming of battles they had never seen and songs they had never heard. The Codex was awakening, and with it, a buried part of the world was calling back. Tari brought the fragment to the Vault of Memory, a chamber sealed since Adepoju's time. There, guarded by silent monks, sat the Mirror of Oranyan, an obsidian pool said to reflect not what is, but what is forgotten. Tari leaned in and saw herself, older, hardened, bleeding, leading a crowd of thousands through fire. The mirror whispered, "You are not the reader now, you are the next author." Tari returned to the Codex. She flipped through it feverishly, line by line, passage by passage, until she found it. An empty page. Then words began appearing one by one in glowing ink.
Truth.
is a drumbeat. If you forget how to dance, you forget who you are. Now the beat begins again. She looked up. And outside people were gathering, without knowing why. Some carried old instruments, others wore ancestral cloth. Children stood still, eyes glowing. The ground trembled. A storm gathered, but it was not of wind or rain. It was sound. The drums returned, first softly, then louder. From the earth, from the sky, from the bones of ancestors long gone. The people remembered, not in words, but in rhythm. And Tari, she stood before them, Codex in hand, and began to speak. As Tari's voice echoed, the Codex wrote itself anew. A new chapter, a new voice, a new age of remembering. And across the world, in places once erased from maps, drums answered back. In the Amazon, in the Sahel, in the icy north, in the crumbled ruins of forgotten cities, everywhere, the buried past rose like dawn, because truth, once told, never sleeps forever.